Thank you, Chair Cervantes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. I've noticed that the lighting has changed in my office, and I might appear to some of you as a disembodied voice. I'm sorry about that. I have tried to adjust it. Um, I'm here today to discuss the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act with you in recognition of a few things. We have several new board members, and this change in board composition has prompted Chair Cervantes, Executive Director Johnson Hall, and I to come to the conclusion that it would be useful to familiarize our newer members with Bagley-Keene fundamentals, and then to offer a refresher to those of our board members who are longstanding members of State of California boards. In addition, although the actual law that codifies Bagley-Keene may not have changed much in the recent past, case law may change interpretations of the law itself. So I know that many of you, for example, are familiar with the Brown Act and have great expertise. Many of you are familiar with Bagley-Keene and have great expertise. And those two bodies of law do track, but they are not exactly the same. So hopefully we can get to a place today where we're all aware of potential Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act violations and have discussions about those and then not commit them. So can I ask that we go to the first slide, please? Thank you. So what is the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act? It's basically a recognition that you as a board of directors and we as Cal HFA staff are conducting the people's business. And the legislature has put great weight and emphasis on our actions being done in an open and transparent way, in large part so that members of the public can observe what we're doing, can participate in the process, and be part of the consensus building. I would be a bad lawyer if I didn't offer you a little disclaimer. The application of Bagley-Keene can be very fact and circumstance driven. So if you look at the law itself, I would consider it to be fairly straightforward, but the application of it sometimes is riddled with peril. So please take advantage of your legal team here at Cal HFA or any other counsel that you are comfortable speaking with. If you feel as though there is something that would be appropriate to speak about in a public meeting, or you're concerned that it would not be, we are completely available to you and happy to talk through any concerns or questions that you may have. I can also say, for example, I think I saw Mr. Seeley sitting in for Director Vasquez. Two attorneys can read the law, read the applicable case law, and still come to reasonably difficult conclusions about how to apply that law. So again, we're here to help, and we want to be sure that you're all comfortable that when we're conducting these meetings, we're doing everything in adherence to the law. For anybody who's a legal wonk, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act can be found at Government Code sections 11120 all the way through 11132. And as Cal HFA is a public instrumentality and political subdivision of the state, we must comply with Bagley-Keene. I'll stop for a moment just to see if I've already confused you or bored you. If not, let's move on to the next slide, please. So as you all have probably observed, we do publish the agendas for all Cal HFA board meetings and subcommittee meetings 10 days in advance of the actual meeting as required by law. Generally speaking, the board must conduct its meetings and make its decisions in public. And we must allow people to attend and participate meaningfully in our board meetings. Next slide, please. So as I referenced briefly before, Cal HFA's board meetings are squarely within the purview of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. And it does also cover our two existing subcommittees, which are the Audit Committee and the Executive Evaluation Committee. Those meetings all must be conducted publicly. Next slide, please. So here's where it starts to get interesting and complicated. When we ask ourselves what constitutes a meeting, this definition, I think, is fairly straightforward. Anytime a majority of the members of the board congregate and they deliberate upon any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So real estate finance related to Cal HFA. If, for example, the entire board wanted to come to my house and discuss our favorite guacamole recipes, and then have a guacamole party, I would be in support of that because I love guacamole and I'm kind of hungry right now. But guacamole recipes are not within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So we can all get together and there is no violation there. In addition, if one board member wanted to meet with a staff member of Cal HFA to discuss board member concerns or any other topic that's within the jurisdiction of the board, that's perfectly fine. If, for example, and this is I think a contextual example that will help. Let's say, for example, Chairperson Cervantes and Board Member Avila Farias are aware of a down payment assistance product that has recently become available in Contra Costa County, and they see that it may have statewide application. They can certainly contact Director Johnson Hall and say, hey, we want to talk this through with you. This might be something that Cal HFA should turn its attention to. That's permissible. However, anytime a quorum of board members gathers and discusses current or anticipated Cal HFA business, we must notice a public meeting. Does that make sense to everyone? Great, thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Serial meetings are where we can be exposed to legal peril, and they usually take shape in two ways. The first is in a linear communication. So board member A speaks to board member B about a topic that's within the purview of the board and Cal HFA. Board member B then goes on to speak to board member C. Board member C discusses with board member D, and then you have an illegal linear communication, because eventually you're going to have the board of directors garnering consensus and speaking in mass on a topic that's within the purview of the board outside of the ears and sight of the public. A second legal peril are what we would call spoken hub communications. So if in advance of this meeting, I would have contacted each and every one of you board members or a majority of board members and said, I'd like to discuss with you agenda item number 5. I have some thoughts about this multifamily transaction. I would be the hub, you would be the spokes, and we would be in clear violation of Bagley-Keene. Next slide, please. As I said before, we do have subcommittees, and these subcommittees, which are both 3-member committees, must conduct their meetings in view of the public. So that would be Executive Evaluation Committee and Audit Committee. Next slide, please. Before the pandemic, these were the rules on your screen now around how to properly conduct teleconference and video conference board meetings. Any board member that was not physically in the location of the larger board gathering needed to be in a place where a member of the public could join that board member and also participate in the board meeting. Currently, the governor has in place an executive order that allows us to do what we're doing today, which is a fully virtual meeting. But the executive order does have an expiration date. And so sometime in the future, we may go back to the model of this teleconference and video conference rule structure. And so wanted to make sure that you were all aware of this. That if, for example, Ms. Sotelo, who is a Southern California resident, cannot physically come to a meeting, she may be in a location where she can meaningfully participate, still vote as part of the roll call, but wherever she is, that location would have to be open and available to members of the public, and as well as being ADA compliant. Next slide, please. So as we talk about the purposes of the act, this is for me where it gets complicated and interesting all at the same time. We conduct the people's business, and we are beholden to the people. So we must always be mindful of keeping a seat at our board meeting table for the people. When the legislature created the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, there was recognition that this would make meetings somewhat cumbersome and might have a chilling effect on what otherwise be a natural process for creating consensus. But in the legislature's view, it is more important to have a completely open and transparent conduct of public business than it is to have efficient yet somewhat opaque government operations occurring. If the efficiency were the top priority, the legislature would have just created a department and then permit that department head to make the decisions out of the view of the public. However, whenever the legislature does create that multi-member board, as is CalHFA's board, it makes a different value judgment. It is mandating that the government go through the consensus building process and do so in view of the public. And I think that it really is the only way for us to create and support public trust and confidence in the work that we're doing. So I want to kind of transition to a discussion about how CalHFA is unique and how it actually makes your role as our board of directors even more important and prominent. So the legislature codified the role and composition of CalHFA's board of directors. CalHFA was specifically not organized with a control agency, meaning that we don't have an entity that dictates our policies, our operations, or our business decisions. For those of you who are relatively new to state government, control agencies are the norm, and those are the oversight entities for the majority of state government. So for those of you who are familiar with the Department of General Services will mandate to most state agencies how they conduct their contracting practice. Because of CalHFA's unique position where we're sort of at the intersection of being a, political subdivision of the state, but simultaneously acting a lot like a private sector entity that has to compete in a marketplace, we straddle this very delicate balance. And frankly, because we don't have that control agency, CalHFA's board of directors steps in to assume that role. I think that Dr. Mbasiani, a couple of meetings ago, did a good job of highlighting that nuanced difference between CalHFA and many other state organizations, which is that your oversight is critical to us. Our board of directors' ability to spot blind spots in our business practices and highlight those for us, to alert us to market changes, whether they be financial or other, has been of great benefit to us and frankly has really contributed to our efficiency and effectiveness over the years. CalHFA is a lot more like CalPERS or CalSTRS. They also have board oversight. Sometimes, and this is again by design, our board of directors was created to be representative of the entire state and to be representative of people who have divergent opinions, experiences, educational background and training, so that when we come together and you as a board of directors are guiding our activities, your divergent opinions are discussed in a public way, and the conclusions that we come to, the action items that you approve, come to us in a way that is done with the public's full awareness and participation. So in conclusion to this part of the purpose of the Act and the uniqueness of CalHFA, I would want to offer to you that since you are our board of directors and our de facto control agency, in my mind, your role is more prominent, which adds emphasis to the need for us to adhere to Bagley-Keene and to be as transparent as possible. Next slide, please. These are just some sort of technical requirements of the Act. Most of you, I believe, will have seen this in your experience as a board member. We distribute a 10-day notice to any member of the public, as well as you, about the scheduled meetings. It's posted on the internet, and we make it very clear who can be contacted if you have questions or concerns about the content of a meeting, agenda changes, attendance, anything like that. Next slide, please. The agenda must let members of the public, of course, as well as our board of directors, know what we will be discussing. And we cannot improvise our agenda. When it's published, it's fairly concrete. We can remove agenda items, but we cannot make material changes to the agenda after it's published. And the board may not take an action on items that are not included in the agenda. So if you have a topic of interest or something that you believe is an item that the board should take up for deliberation, I would ask you to please contact Executive Director Johnson Hall and Chair Cervantes and let them know that you would like that to be added for future consideration to the meeting's agenda. And if it's feasible, I suspect that Chair Cervantes and Executive Director Johnson Hall will do so. Next slide, please. Again, these are some basics about public access and participation in our meetings. I think, for me, the condensed takeaway from these set of rules is that Cal HFA and the state of California cannot create any unreasonable barriers or hindrances to the public's ability to participate. We want that public participation. And sometimes, of course, that may lead to critical public comments. However, those are welcomed. They give the Cal HFA staff an opportunity to see affordable housing from a different perspective, to become aware of potential unintended consequences of our actions, and frankly, to give us an opportunity to grow as an organization. That the constructive criticism and that, sometimes negative feedback, it just makes us better. We can, however, impose limitations on the time limit when a member of the public will speak to us, and we can also request that members of the public who may be all coming from a same vantage point, and some of the comments may be redundant, we can ask them to condense those down into fewer comments, just in the interest of time and efficiency. Next slide, please. Oh, I think I just covered that. Okay, next slide, please. Lastly, I wanted to highlight for our board that there are permissible circumstances where we can have closed session meetings. They're very limited. In the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act itself, they are numerous, but many of those closed session exemptions are specific to a particular agency, department, or board. For us, I just listed 4 that I think come up most commonly. These are the personnel exception, pending litigation exception, real property, and security. The personnel exception is where the performance of a public employee is discussed. And the reason that we do that is because we want to protect the privacy of the employee. No one would want derogatory comments about his or her performance to be discussed in a public way, and we don't want to embarrass anybody, but we also don't want to chill the board's candor in giving that constructive feedback to any public employee. So those closed sessions under the personnel exception will include performance, meeting goals, deficiencies in performance. The one thing that we don't discuss in closed session is the salary. The compensation for a public employee, that must be done in a public meeting. I understand that different board members may have had different experiences in this, but I'm just sharing with you the current state of the law right now. Pending litigation exception, I believe that we recently did have a pending litigation discussion where I was able to freely discuss with the board the anticipated litigation. This information will usually come from your general counsel or a member of your legal team. And of course, we're not going to discuss legal exposure or strategy in a public meeting. We don't negotiate any real property transactions in a public meeting. That would completely remove any negotiating advantages or strategy that we would have had. And then lastly, we don't discuss security situations in public meetings. One example of this is our information security officer, our IT team, may make presentations to our audit committee about security findings in our IT system or security vulnerabilities. We've not publicly discussed that because it would tell other folks who may have ill intent toward the agency how to reverse engineer our IT system and how to take advantage of any vulnerabilities that we have. So these are basically the 4 closed session instances that I anticipate we would call meetings for. We do still agendize that, and at the conclusion of the closed session, the board chair will likely give a high-level description of what occurred in that closed session while excluding any sensitive information. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide on Bagley-Keene for you today. In the event that we do violate Bagley-Keene and a member of the public or anybody calls our attention to it, it can invalidate any decisions or actions that the board made that were in violation of Bagley-Keene. We may have to restart the entire process. For those of you who are thinking, oh no, what if we had an inadvertent Bagley-Keene violation on a multifamily transaction that we approved? There is some peril there, but there also are some exemptions about detrimental reliance and contracting. Promises that we've made to other organizations contractually would not necessarily fell the multifamily transaction, but that is always a risk. We can be sued. And if there's a proven intent to deceive the public, it will be charged as a misdemeanor. And then finally, I believe I should have listed this on the slide and neglected to do so. Violations of Bagley-Keene damage our reputation, and that reputational risk is real. We want the members of the public to know that we are good stewards of public resources, and Bagley-Keene violations will damage a reputation that we have frankly worked very hard on over the years to make sure that we have credibility, continuity, and consistency in how our operation is functioning. I believe that's my last slide. I'm happy to take any questions, and if board members have specific questions, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to confer with you at your convenience. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.